Hello! Today I'd like to talk about the importance of puzzles in horror games. And I've been reading Thomas Scrip from Amnesia. You know, he works for Frictional, creative director, and he keeps a really good blog if you're interested in horror. And one of the things that he talks about is how he thinks puzzles are the best fit for horror in terms of sort of the gameplay hook. Well, I mean, certainly makes a very good argument for it. I mean, in that if you're fighting enemies, then they're not really scary. But I'm not sure if I would necessarily agree. Well, I guess that this developer diary will be talking about the role of puzzles in horror games. And so I think, firstly, I mean, Thomas Scrip talks a lot about doing puzzles right and creating, interesting things that mesh with the story. And I think that's really important if you're going to go the route of puzzles because, and he points this out, is in a lot of games you're just faced with something like, here's something that's clearly a puzzle, like Fatal Frame. You get to a door and there are these stones on the door and you need the missing stone piece, and then for whatever reason you're restricted to only 5 movements or something to get the thing in the right place. Or, Silent Hill has a lot of them where, you have to place the organs in the body in the right order and find them and then place them in the right order or something. Matches some scrap of paper you find. And I mean, I guess, at least in Silent Hill's case, they all sort of seem nightmarish and unreal that you have to do these kind of arbitrary things for some different result. But I think in general they sort of take you out of the world of the story because you're basically doing your thing, and then all of a sudden you're in puzzle solving mode, problem solving mode, arranging organs or trying to figure out these things. I don't know. I mean, certainly I think, Thomas Scrip's ideas of integrating it into the narrative and is really important and probably is really successful if you will be really successful, I mean, in terms of creating the best puzzles for a horror game. But I think taking a step back is, the question is, are puzzles the best gameplay for horror? And I'm not sure, and I guess I think it really depends on what you define as a puzzle. Because, like, for example, we have some puzzle-like enemy setups in Neverending Nightmares, and those have been, pretty popular. And of course, not all of our enemy setups are sort of puzzling. And of course, the problem with the puzzling enemy setups is, some people get it and some people don't, and without hint messages, we try to throw in-game hints, and, I think at a certain point, like, the biggest puzzle of the game, we just sort of turn off and say, whatever, we'll change it if you're not figuring it out. But the thing is that, I think for a straight puzzle, like, make sure the levels of these water tanks are the same, or things like that. And I mean, I'm not criticizing, I guess Thomas Scrip is talking about SOMA, and I'm sure the puzzles are really good there, but, I mean, just in general, like, when I'm in puzzle solving mode, I'm in, problem solving, sort of trying to determine the rules of the system and how to solve the puzzle, but I'm not necessarily, scared. So, I mean, like, at least for me, when you're doing the tension, or sorry, when you're doing the puzzles, the tension is sort of dropped way down. And so one of the things with Neverending Nightmares is we're working really hard to keep the tension up. Um, Keep the tension up and just sort of keep this constant pressure. And of course we, it comes and goes, and we sort of play with, a knob sort of thing in terms of, what tension we're going for, and we sort of crescendo at the end of a nightmare, and then each nightmare is sort of this bump, but it's leading up to the end, or at least that's what we're trying to do. But I think ordinarily when you're like, I'm gonna solve this puzzle, I need to collect these pieces and put them together in a certain shape, then you're not necessarily thinking about how scary and how terrifying the environment is. And one of the things is that Thomas Grip mentions that you need sort of puzzles for the idea of interactivity in the game, and I think that you definitely want something that's just not like a haunted house simulator where the ghouls can jump out at you, but they can't really hurt you, because I think at that point, if it's just like, sort of a walking simulator type of game, I think you can do some great things with atmosphere, but fundamentally I think people will realize the enemies have no teeth, and then without that, threat of getting killed, it's not, as tense. But I think the idea is that you want that sort of threat, but you don't want to kill the player, at least, not very frequently. You want them to be able to beat the game, but without, dying, because dying to some extent releases tension. I mean, I guess it depends. Certainly, I think in Neverending Nightmares we have a good sort of wake-up cycle. You're it's almost more like a teleport than a death, because we don't have to reload anything or punish the player or whatever. But I think it is important to have enemies and things that do threaten the player. But if I think that puzzles aren't the best horror aspect of the game, what do I think you should aim for with your core gameplay loops? And I think to me, I think sort of the stealth aspects of the games, are the most important. Like if you look at Outlast or Amnesia, I mean, certainly in Amnesia, the thing that I remember most, the thing that resonated the most with me, was crouching behind a box, hiding, looking away from the monster, as he opened the door and tried to find me. I mean, that to me was like the best moment in Amnesia, and really brilliant design. And the puzzles, I mean, I vaguely recall some puzzles, and I was just like, what does this have to do with horror? I don't know, getting things at certain levels. And I mean, like, to me, I just saw the puzzles as sort of like obstacles. Like, okay, I got to get through this to get back to the cool stuff, hiding from enemies, and yeah. So I mean, I don't know, and I mean, certainly it seems like at Frictional they think a lot. They iterate on their designs and learn from to refine their games, and so I mean the puzzles in SOMA maybe leaps and bounds more interesting than what's in Amnesia. I mean, certainly if you look at Penumbra to Amnesia, I think Amnesia's a much better game, which I think is a great thing. If as a developer you're constantly improving, certainly I hope to do that as well. But I think stealth, and I mean, you could essentially boil down stealth to puzzles, right? Like, I mean, to some extent, it depends on how your stealth system works. But I mean, it can be sort of puzzling. And while I'm not a fan of stealth gaming in general, just because I think it's often too punishing to the player and often unpredictable. I mean, I think it works well in a horror. In the context of a horror game. I mean, certainly I think Outlast did a pretty good job of it, although, I mean, a lot of times I was sort of frustrated because I couldn't really predict what the enemy would do or, figure out their pattern or figure out how to get past them. It was just sort of like, try, and then, okay, I did it this time. But, I mean, that's not to say that stealth doesn't work in horror, or you couldn't make a stealth game that I like. I mean, I feel like it's just a matter of, removing some of the frustration. So anyway, that's my thoughts on puzzles and sort of the gameplay loops of horror. Thanks for watching.